So in today's episode, we're going to do the guide to water. So this will be both a modern and an old guide. It depends on how much money you have and how much you're willing to break the bank. So firstly, let's just quickly go over water summoners. Oh, I'm going to use peak monsters for this video, but if you prefer using normal Splinterlands deck, let me know, and then just pop it down in the comments. Whichever one is more preferred, I'll then do that for the rest of the guides. I'm just trying peak monsters now because I quite like peak monsters and it's just a little bit easier for me to maneuver, but it doesn't really matter. And it also shows all the money and the bids and the last value, so it's a lot easier for you guys can get an idea of what you want to spend. But basically, when you look at water summoners, it's a little bit different to fire because fire is just very heavily focused on melee damage in all the additions and speed, and then a little bit in archers and explosions with Jotun, where water kind of went a different direction. With beta, you can see that it's got +1 magic and then +1 magic, so it was very focused on just having the magic cards, buffing them, and then just destroying with magic cards. When Untamed came around, it kind of went the direction of death. If you can predict what the enemy's going to pick, you can play that and counter it very easily. So you've got things like Bortus, which has got -1 magic. So if they play magic, you can counter the magic. If they play a Jotun or a Prince Rene and an archer focused, you can play an LIR and then counter that with blind, armor, and magic and archer reflect. And then this is very, very situational, probably still one of the worst summoners in the game, but if you can predict that they're playing Earthquake, you could then equip Snare on all your monsters, and then you never miss a flying monster. And then now with Chaos Legion, they've kind of taken water in a completely different direction, but they've given you 1 more speed and 1 armor. So I think with the Kyler, you can kind of play it anything. So this gives it a lot more freedom in the sense that you can now play magic, melee, and archers all at the same time. But I typically with her play hardcore melee water, but you can also add in some good cards if you can afford them. So if you only playing standard, remember that you want the Earthquake or the Broken Brick borders as well as the Chaos Legion Dark Blue, and then you would ignore the older blue colors from beta and alpha. But I like to play both. It depends on how much you want to spend. An Alric and a Valnamore are very, very expensive, but they're very, very fun. My 2 summoners that I would suggest you pick up, I wouldn't buy an LRR for 250. I think the market is roughly at about 150 is a more fair price. So I would try and pick up, I bought my LRI for like 130, like a week ago. So I would try and pick one up if you can. But if not, I would suggest just Bortus. And if you're on a budget, pick up the Kyler. I think both of these are a great way to play water because it still gives you the freedom to play everything. But you can then also just shift into anti-magic if you know that they're going to play an Obsidian or the older water summoners. Or you can then play the Kyler if you know it's not, if there's magic has been banned or something like that. Or you just want to play heavily into the melee cards. So now I'm going to break down the different water monsters. And I think just like last time, I'm going to start with the Legendaries. So which are the most important Legendaries? I think, as always, the Torrent or the Fiend is the most important, just because you're going to use it so often. I mean, obviously, if you're going to play Wild, a Chicken is good enough, but a Fiend also just helps for whenever you need it. Water has some incredible summoners, but most of them do require a little bit of love. So Kraken is standard, great card. Very expensive at $73, but it's the only water card with Taunt, and it does such a good job of Taunt. I will say that because it's got 12 mana, there is the new ability which does destroy any monsters that have more than 10 mana, so that is something to consider as a more of a counter towards the Kraken now. But still, great position 1 tank. Frost Giant also does a position 1 tank quite well. except I do think there's better and cheaper cards than a Frost Giant, so it's not a priority. The new Whale is really cool, but I would say try and be in Gold League for it, because then it gets self-heal on 13 HP, but it's still a cool wall to have. But there are better. I would suggest something along the lines of the Lobsterdamus in a position 2 wall, and then you use something else as a position 1, because there are some really cool tanks in water. So out of these 3 frontline tanks, the Kraken is the most desirable. Jin Oceanus, I think, just for how much it costs and the big wall and the void, it's just a no-brainer. You should just pick one up, put it in position 2. Like I said, this will do the same job as this, but it does have the 2 damage plus the void. I know he has void as well, but he doesn't do damage. River, good card, got resurrect. It's even better if you can combine it with something like the Kraken, because the Kraken's got taunt, so you know that River won't die, and he will then be allowed to resurrect the Kraken 1 extra time. 2-Gun Pete is probably one of the best dice 1 mana cost legendaries, purely because of his high speed for a level 1 card, and then also the 2 HP. So to get an idea of what I'm talking about, if I were to switch this all off and then switch off water, you can see that he's got 1 more speed but no HP. She's got the same speed but 1 less HP, but she does magic damage. And then he has 1 more speed but 1 less HP. So, and then obviously Eponia's in a league of her own because of how good she is, but let's not talk about that. So let's switch this back on. The best card, and if you can afford it, Ruler of the Seas is so strong. Very, very expensive, but it has a lot of magic damage with Blast. And then if you can level it up, it's like 1 extra level gives you speed plus 1 extra damage, but it's super expensive. So even just having 1 BXC is a luxury. I don't own one. I wish I did, but I don't. Something like the Phantom of the Abyss, good card. I think it's a bit expensive right now. I would try and get it at about 85 bucks or a bit cheaper than 117, but also high damage, low HP, but it's got flying and it's got dodge and high speed. So really good card for earthquakes, and also just the dodge factor is really good. Poseidon, great card, but you also need this to be level 2, and that's because at level 2 it gets blast. So a bit expensive, but you're looking at about 65, 130, about 190 like US dollars for a level 2. So if you can afford it, it's a really good backline archer, but there are budget versions of all these cards. So I think most of these are luxuries. The most essential one would be your Torrent Fiend with Jin Oceanus, and then maybe Kraken, Ruler of the Seas, 2-Gun Pete, Poseidon, and Phantom of the Abyss, if you can afford it. River, also nice, but I don't use it too often. Frost Giant, I barely use. I don't play in Gold League, so I don't use the Whale as much as I should. But the Whale is a really good card, and it will take over the job of the big Gluttonous Ooze type card. Now let's look at some of Water's best tanks. So there's probably one of my favorite tanks in the game, which is the Sea Monster. It's still, in my opinion, a card that you should pick up. It's only $4.20. It does sound like a lot because that's basically more than a Chaos Legion pack right now, and it's got very bad speed. A lot of water tanks have really bad speed, which is why Kyla does a really good job, because they also don't have too much armor, but really good card. Got high damage, decent HP, but it's also got self-heal, which is always really strong for bronze and low silver play. If you don't like to see, if you can level it up, it eventually gets thorns, but that's only in Gold League and above. But ideally, just try and get it to level 4, because then it gets 1 extra damage. If you don't like the Sea Monster, my second favorite tank, but also 1 HP, 1 speed, really bad. Let's just take away the legendary cards, because we've already done that. So position 2, no, we're not. Let's do tanks. Naga Warrior is not as good as you think. She used to be a lot better, and she's much better when you can get Enrage on her, and you can get her damage to be 4, but that's in Gold League and above. So I would say skip the Naga Warrior. I love Torhelio. I think he's a great card if you can afford him. Like $6.40, and what he gives you is 4 damage, 4 armor, 8 HP. The only thing that hinders him is the speed, but he's also got void armor. So if you're if you're facing too much magic, you can pick a Torhelio and play a Bortus, and that's already -2 magic damage. So even Obsidian will just tickle you basically. Other ones include, I love a Frozen Soldier, to be honest. I think it's really good in Equalizer games because it's got so much armor compared to the other cards. But even if you don't have it, once it gets to level 5, it's got Magic Reflect and Shield, so it's like the perfect all-round tank. And then it's got 6 armor, 5 HP, 3 damage, so it's a lethal weapon at level 5. But even getting a level 4 is pretty good. But I think minimum you want is a level 4 just to get the 5 HP to fight against magic cards. And then Serpent of the Eid, a really cool card because of the dodge. It gets Return Fire at level 5, but that's only in Gold League and above. So ideally you have it at level 4, and that's because with dodge, speed is very important because dodge gives 25% miss chance if you are at the same level. So if both monsters are at the same speed, there's a 25% chance to miss. If you're at a higher speed, the better. So just you want to be as high as speed as quick as possible, because then you can dodge as much as possible, which is how a low armor, low HP tank works. It's kind of similar to the Serpent Spy, the Serpent Warrior of Fire. And then the last tank that is worth noting, and probably the most undervalued one, is the Spineback Turtle. You can also see straight away 1 speed, like all of their tanks are 1 speed to begin with, except the Serpent of the Eid. So definitely worth picking up a Serpent of the Eid just for the high speed, and then you can have a Torhelio as backup or for reverse speed games. But Spineback Turtle, really good. Ideally you get it to level 5. It can be used in silver then, and it gets 2 damage. But even if you can just get it to level 4, it's 1 damage, so it's not that good. But then you've got 3 armor, 7 HP, and Thorns. So it's a really good, beefy, like 4 mana cost tank. And then if you play in the magic strategy, you would then line it up with magic cards in the back, which is just how I would play it. So those are the best water tanks. Now for position 2s, I think the first honorable mention has to be a Lobsterdamus. It's so strong as it's got shield. Eventually it also gets Magic Reflect at level 3, which means you can use this in silver, and then it gets Thorns. But being realistic, I think most of us will be lucky to get a level 3 one, so that's got Magic Reflect. So Lobsterdamus is really, really strong. It does have a little bit of weak magic, but as a position 2 cheap tank, there's nothing better. Other things that I like, if you can get Electric Eels, eventually they get Blast, but that's only for Gold League and above, so if not, don't really use them. Lobsterdamus is king for me. If it's super high mana, I'll use a Jin Ocean. There's this new card, the Wave Brood, which I'm still learning and experimenting about. I don't really like a position 2 taunt card, because, I was wrong about the Kraken being the only taunt card. This Wave Brood has taunt as well, but position 2 taunts I don't really like, because if they have Blast, the Blast will then hit position 1 and position 3, so I'm kind of iffy about a position 2 Wave Brood. I might put it in position 6 to take the hits, and then that would be a different story. Eventually it gets Void, but that's only in Gold League and above. But you'd want to try and get it to level 3 so that you can get that extra damage out. Other great position 2s, things like, if you can afford it, in Gold League, I always play, it's a really cheap position 2 card, but I have to mention it. It's Mermaid Healer. Sorry, when I say cheap, I mean mana cheap. It's not cheap in price. It's 21 US dollars, so it's very expensive. But if you can get it like level 5 or level 4 in Gold League, you're looking at a it does 1 magic damage. It has 5 HP because it'll get 1 from Strengthen. And then it just buffs all the other monsters with 1 HP. So it's a super good position 2 card. And then eventually it also gets Triage. So it heals the backline. And yeah, it's a really cool card for that reason. But very, very expensive. So like a substitute for that, but obviously it costs a lot more mana, is you use things like Captain's Ghost. So it's got the 2 magic damage. If you buff it to the 3, that would be in Gold League and above. But it's got Affliction, and ideally you get level 3 because it's got 8 HP. And then it's just this big, beefy card. Like I said, if you don't want to use cards like the Lobsterdamus. There is the new cards, which are things like the NASA and the Jin Ocean, which are also really good position 2s. Because in position 2s, you're basically going to just drop a whole bunch of big magic wall tanks is kind of the play. They did have a damaging card, a melee card. Let me just try and find it. I know I've seen it. It is the Flying Squid. So Flying Squid to me is the melee version of a Captain's Ghost. So if you are going a melee strategy, use the Flying Squid. It does the same job. Obviously magic damage is probably more preferred still, but Flying Squid is also a really strong position 2 card to use. Position 3, this is where I like assassins, or once again more magic. So Deep Lurker is a really cool assassin. I think just this level 6 opportunity card that does 3 damage is crazy strong. If you can get it to level 4, that's the best, because then you can get 1 more damage. So that's like always the milestone to get it to. If you get it to level 5, it just gets 1 extra speed. Plus, if you use a Kala, it then has 5 speed. So that's just really strong and good. The other one that I love is a Feasting Seaweed. I think people sleep on this card too much. At level 4 or level 5, you've got a 3 damaging. Actually, level 3 it's already 3 damaging. So the main thing is the speed, but Kala kind of fixes that. But you can basically have a Feasting Seaweed and a Deep Lurker running around the map causing havoc with opportunities and snipe. Other good position 3s is something like the Wavesmith, because it's got Protect. Like, this card was the nuisance of bronze for a long time. It's super cheap right now. It's only 18 cents. Definitely pick one up. If you can get it higher level, it's better, because then you can get it to 2 damage. And to me, that's always good. But just giving everything armor is always strong. I know that Kyla kind of does that already by giving everyone 1 armor, but she'll give everyone an extra 2 armor. And you'll notice that a lot of the cards I'm suggesting don't have armor. So Flying Squid, Deep Lurker, your Feasting Seaweed, your Sea Monsters, they all, Captain's Ghost, none of them actually have armor. So having a card that gives you armor is a really crucial position 3. Sea Genie is okay. He's got bad speed, bad HP, so not the best. If you want to play a melee strategy, Saber Shock, really strong. Get it to level 5, because then it gets the 3 damage, and then it's got 4 speed, 3 HP. So good card. Bit expensive, but worth noting. I really like this card if you can get it to level 4, but then that's pretty much Gold League and above. But even a level 2, it's a 2 mana, 2 damage with 5 HP. So this card is perfect to put in the back as your position 6. But I just scrolled past it and I just had to acknowledge how good it is. So just to continue, position 4 to 5, you'd either fill with more magic or more assassins. So things like the Coral Wraith does both. It's an assassin and it's a magic card. Very expensive still, but it's really strong. I like her, but she'd be used more in like 99 mana games. But she does the job, and you should definitely own one of her, especially considering that she's an epic. So I would definitely put her in the deck. And for your archers, moving on to archers now, I highly recommend things like the Angelic Mandarin, as well as the Igor. Like, these two are really strong because you'll use them so often, and all they'll be used for is basically the plug at the back of your deck, which is just this. It's an annoying archer, but it's just this like big 5 HP on both of them. Like, the one's got 4, but eventually you'll level up to it's got 5 HP. So it'll be this big 5 HP archer that just sits in the back, and he'll take 2 to 3 hits from these like 2 melee damage opportunity or stealth cards. So they'll just be so valuable because they'll take 2 to 3 hits. If it's got protect, it would then even take a few more hits. And then by the time you've taken all these hits, hopefully your opportunity cards or your magic cards have broken through their deck and you've won the game already. Where something like the Harpoonist, for the same amount of, like, for double the mana, you're getting the same amount of HP. So this is not a good backline archer. You'd want to put it in position 5, but its damage is super, super good. Having that 3 damage is so good. If you can get it to 4, it's even better. And then if you're playing in Gold League, having Knockout combined with Igor's stun is really important. I know I've been talking for quite a while, so I'm just going to show you a little bit more what I'm talking about. So, as I said, what you would want for your deck is, in terms of the legendaries, let's switch everything else off. In terms of the summoners, if you're going to build, there's 2 ways to do it, but the first way would be something like, if you build the magic summoners, then what you would want to do is, when you move on to the legendary monsters, you would want the Phantom of the Abyss, the Ruler of the Seas. The most important is Ruler of the Seas and a Jin Oceanus, because this will be your like position 2 tank. This will be your main damage carry with Magic Blast. If you can get the Kraken, that's good. It's kind of a luxury though. You don't need the Kraken. Your frontline tanks would be something that's not important. You don't care about the damage, you just care that it soaks up the HP for a bit. So something like the Snapback Turtle, where it's got no damage, but you've got high HP, high armor, very important. You would then also play things like Sea Monster, just because it's annoying and it's got self-heal. Or you could then pick something like, you wouldn't care about the speed. So you would pick something like Tohelia the Frozen, just a big beefy frontliner to just get hit a few times. And then you'd put in your position 2s, your Lobster Damas or your Mermaid healers, just to give extra HP, extra heal. And then you'd finish it off with things like the Wavesmiths, or if it's super high mana, you'd put in like Nerissa, or Medusas if you've got the money, like the mermaids to put in just to get extra damage, Coral Wraith for the stun, and for the stealth to attack the back line. And then that's pretty much it, and you just run that strategy like crazy, and you just magic damage nuke them to win. If you play something that's less magic intensive, so say Bortus or a Kyla. So Bortus is just, you protect yourself from magic damage. Kyla is like, you go on the offensive and you take extra armor and you take speed. So in that case, what you'd want in terms of your monsters, the legendary monsters, this is more of a budget build, but you basically don't need to worry about Rule of the Sea. You don't need to worry about Phantom of the Abyss. You definitely still want your Jin Oceanus. You definitely want your 2 Guns Pete. You want your Torrent Fiend. If you can afford a Poseidon level 2, you want a Poseidon. You want a Kraken. It's like Kraken would be great. And then the type of monsters you'd play is Demented Shark is good. I still like, the Inspire is what's really good, but there's better cards for it. I'll show you. So then in position 1, your position 1's a lot more important now, because you don't just want a no damage, low speed position 1. You would want something that's very, very like heavy hitting. You'd want your Serpent of the Eid, because it's got the damage, it's got low HP, but it's got high speed and dodge, and it pairs really well with your Kyla. And then Bortus just protects it from magic damage a little bit better. If you don't do that, a really good one actually is a Demon Shark or a Diamond Shark. Same thing, it's got trample, it's got high armor, high HP, but the main thing is it's got good speed. So this is going to actually carry your deck. And then to support it, you could play things like your Flying Squid or Captain's Ghost, followed up by your Assassins, so your Deep Lurker and your Feasting Seaweed. And then you have your Wavesmith to offer more armor and more protection. A card I didn't mention, but definitely one that you should know about, is, like I said, I don't like a Demented Shark because I don't like it in position 1. But if you can get a Pirate Captain and you play in Gold League and above, you can get Inspire on a Pirate Captain, and that's just awesome. You could have this badass card that does 2 damage, high speed, okay damage, but it's got Inspire, so it inspires all of your Assassins, all of your Flying Squids, and your frontline tank. So it's a really good card to have, and then it's also protected by the Wavesmith. And then just at the back of your deck, just as we said, a cheap mana plug, just to soak up some of that stealth hits, and basically to protect your Pirate Captain from, like, that's giving you Inspire, is you're going to play your little Mandarin. This little guy is just going to take some hits, or you'll play the Igor. And same thing, it's got its HP. If you can get it to have stun, that's really good. If not, just get it to level 3, so it's got the extra damage, and then 5 HP to soak up those hits. Or if you got the money, just buy a Water Elemental. It does the exact same thing. Water Elemental will sit in the back. Ideally, you want to get it to a level 4 or level 5, or level 5 is good for the damage, but basically just something that has heal and good movement speed to sit in the back and take some hits. Or if you've got the money, you'll have your Poseidon doing that damage with Blast. Anyway, guys, that's pretty much the guide to Water. Like, that's how I play Water. I either play it super magic and only magic, or I play it anti-magic or very aggressive melee with a few magic and a few archer cards to support the melee and the opportunity melee like cards. And then I would skip some of the other cards, but pretty much that's it. Let me know what you guys think and what you want to see. So please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments what you want me to do next. And if you're a new player, please use the promo code and I'll happily send you the $0.5 back to you. It just lets me know that people are watching and using the promo, and I'm helping new players join the community. Also, if you find me on the Discord, just pop me a message. I'll happily delegate any of the new players some power